Below the mountainous regions of Totterdown and Windmill Hill lie the sweeping plains of Bedminster. This kingdom has been endowed with magical and mystical energies which pulse and throb through every street and citizen, especially on East Street. I just added that little bit there. Someone's laughed there, so they must know East Street. Nothing there should be taken at face value, so pull up a chair, take a sip of your draft while I share the secrets of Book Club. Jack shuffled past Asda and wrinkled his nose, a reaction to the foul stench emanating from the extractor fans. A smell of old oil and poverty from the McDonald's within. At the double doors to the library, he nipped off the end of his roll-up and placed it in his jacket pocket, then entered and approached the reception counter. The librarian sat with a nose buried in a book. He stood there for a full minute before she carefully placed it onto the counter top, brought Jack into focus, then busied herself with an elastic band. I added that. Jack had seen it all before. It was a test, and he intended to pass it. One corner of the mouth of the librarian, yeah, that's what I think we'll call her, began to twitch. Was she going to speak? She fired the elastic band into a waste paper bin, then moved on to some very important coffee coaster alignment. Allowing herself one little sly look out the corner of her eye towards Jack. Aha, Jack thought, a show of weakness. I'll keep on ignoring her, ignoring me. He dropped into a transcendental Zen-like state, slowing his heartbeat down to 5 beats per minute. She had no chance. He would not even proffer a polite cough to attract her attention, for he already had it. Ah, hello, Mr. Black. I didn't see you there, my arse, he thought. And how may I help you today? Jack removed his bright orange bobble hat and wiped his sweaty brow with a rolled-up sock he kept for just such an eventuality. I'm here for the club meeting, he replied, with a wink and peculiar movement of his left hand, which finished with it resting in his right shoulder, clenched except for his pinky, which was left extended. The librarian raised her eyebrows and looked around for possible eavesdroppers. Her eyes bulged and neck strained. Jack thought he was rather overdramatic, like an amateur attempt at subterfuge performed by a member of an amateur dramatic society, which it was. Do you mean the club or the club? She inquired, with hands face down on the countertop. Jack leaned forward, also placed his hands face down on the countertop. With nicotine breath, he exhaled, that would be the club. And once again, he attempted his hand gymnastics, but due to the laws of gravity, he fell sideways and cracked his head on the way down. The librarian waited a few moments and then inquired, "Are you okay, Mr. Black?" Jack suddenly appeared again, with an angry bruise forming on his temple. Then noticed a folded piece of paper in front of the librarian, who was now holding a forefinger to her lips. This he recognised as universal symbol of shh. He picked it up, read it, and stuffed it into his mouth and chewed. After a few minutes he realised he was not going to be able to swallow it, as every molecule of moisture in his mouth had been sucked up. Jack scraped the masticated mess from his denture, placed it into the disgusted librarian's outstretched hand. After a few minutes, Jack located the C's in the fiction section. After a few more, found the book he required, Cervantes' Don Quixote. He tilted it forward, as instructed, and heard a loud click. Seconds later, both he and the shelving unit were rotated 180 degrees on a turntable, and were now in a dimly lit corridor which smelled of stale tobacco and sweat. Shouts and screams could be heard from one end of the corridor, and this is where Jack headed, with a confident stride replacing his previous shuffle. The corridor led into a large room, approximately the size of a tennis court. In the centre was a raised square platform, about as high as a dog, as wide as a horse, surrounded by a fence of chicken wire, which went all the way up to the ceiling. Two sides of the room held rows of cheap plastic seating, which were occupied by a geriatric baying mob, shaking fists and walking sticks in the air. The targets of their encouragement, stroke vitriol, were two elderly men stripped to the waist in the fight cage. One appeared to be trying to unscrew the other one's head with a chokehold. "Come on, Cyril! You've got him where you want!" Jack shouted, which was somewhat optimistic, as Cyril was the only one currently being slowly throttled, but still managed a faint wave before blacking out. Herbert let him go, and he slumped to the floor unconscious. He then began to climb up one side of the fencing to perform his signature move, the Widowmaker. When at the top of the fence, he looked over his right shoulder to check Cyril's position, then round again to give a cheeky wink to his adoring fans, and flipped backwards, all accompanied by his finishing move, straight out Compton my NWA. It's a very specific reference, that, to people. No one here knows that. Jack screamed at Cyril, but his pleas were drowned out by the raucous revellers. Raucous, read your own words. Revellers, that bloody awful music. Realisation set in, so rather than watch the inevitable, he turned round, slowly towards the corridor he had just entered from. No one survived the Widowmaker. Cyril ever so slightly peeked out his swollen left eye, saw the prima donna posturing to the crowd above him as that bloody awful hip-hop music began to play. That smug little sod will need a hip-hop in a minute, he mused. As soon as Herbert let, Cyril rolled to the side while simultaneously removing his prosthetic leg and left it standing just about where his belly button had been. Herbert had fully intended to land his belly button where that vicious little git's belly button had just moments before, but to his horror was not there at all. As he landed on the lonely leg, the wind was knocked out of him, causing his false teeth to shoot out of his mouth. They bounced across the canvas, through a gap in the fence, and landed in Elsie's gin and tonic. Herbert lay there wheezing, hand outstretched as his former corner man desperately tried to locate his inhaler. Cyril clawed his way up the side of the cage in an effort to help him stand up. Blood dripped from his puffed up eye and down one cheek, onto his chest, which was drenched with sweat. There was silence from the audience as he sank in that horror Herbert, 6 times Bedminster Brawler of the year, had been defeated. One person began to clap, then one more, and so until it sounded like chips in a deep fat fryer, and Cyril just breathed it all in. Bang, bang, bang. Easy, easy, easy. Bang, bang, bang. Easy, easy, easy. Jack worked out the banging was coming from the other side of the bookcase. He approached to put his ear to it, but to his dismay, the head of a sledgehammer came through, missing his noggin by the width of Dante's Inferno. He fell backwards and heard a voice. "Hello, hello, hello, what's all this then?" Jack scarpered back down the corridor. "It's the old Bill, leg it!" The gathered throng moved at surprising speed, disappearing through a secret door which had hitherto been unseen. This door connected to the glazed tile pub across the street. Jack mounted an abandoned shop mobility scooter and pulled up the door of the fighter's cage. "Come on, Cyril, hop on the back." This he did, literally, and they were off. but not without flicking a finger to the establishment as they trundled off. Jack sat supping on his pint of stout and looked across the table at Cyril, with his eye now fully closed. Cyril just returned a sheepish grin and downed the rest of his pint. He'll be the death of me, Jack thought. Och, but he's a handsome devil. Jack had never had any of this hassle whilst wed to Ethel, but she was with the angels now. Indeed, was an angel, as in death as in life. She would have wanted him to be happy, and he was. He had Cyril now, and he was very happy indeed. It wasn't always easy, but nobody said that the love that dare not speak its name would be.